So for those of you that I have not met here, my name is Mark Hummel. I'm with the team at Inspector Empire Builder. Inspector Empire Builder is a mastermind group in our industry where we focus on really just the business building side of home inspection companies. So we've been around for roughly 5 years, and there's around 300 companies in IEB right now. Really, the only reason I share that with you is because it's important for you guys to understand the level of conversation and kind of what our vantage point looks like in the industry, to give a little bit of context to what we're going to talk about here today. So with so many companies in the IEB world, there is every single business stage represented. Okay, so some of you here are single man shops or owner operators. Some of you might be bigger teams, and IEB is representative of the entire industry. So there's a lot of smaller businesses at younger business stages, and all the way up to the companies that have, some of them up to 100, 150 employees. So it's a really interesting look at the industry as each business stage is attacking what's happening right now in our industry a little bit differently. So today we're going to talk about sort of winning in a down market and kind of what that looks like. And depending on your business stage, it could look a little different, but I'd be willing to bet that a lot of the principles are the same. One thing I definitely wanted to say is that I caught about the last 20 minutes of Paul talking just before me. And if you do the things that Paul says, like, you're going to put yourself in a fantastic position. He gave you guys a lot of really, really good advice, a lot of really good actionable stuff for you to really take advantage of the market conditions right now, right? It's all about building relationships. All about building relationships. So where do we start? I'm going to start with just giving you guys a little bit of something I experienced this morning. And that is this. So I was talking to my daughter about numbers. She's 12, and they're learning about all things finance in middle school right now, which I thought was pretty cool. I didn't learn about finance in middle school. But she was telling me that she was having a hard time with some of the math and kind of some of the concepts. And it became apparent that she wasn't really grasping some of the concepts. Let's call it concepts. And so I had her do some math. And what I noticed is she kept getting the wrong answer. She kept getting the wrong answer because she was skipping numbers. I was like, what's going on here? Like, can you count properly? Like, can you just count to 10 and kind of line that out for me and let me know that, like, at least we've got that? And she says, sure. All right. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. I'm looking at her and I'm going, okay, wait, something's wrong here. I was like, dear, you've forgotten half the numbers. And she goes, Dad, I can't even. I can't hear anybody laughing, but I'm assuming everybody is laughing right now. She thought it was funny, at least. There's a lot of people out there in the industry right now that can't even. They can't even wrap their mind around what it looks like to win in a down market, right? Some people who have not been in the industry for very long really have not much experience with what it looks like to be a battle-hardened, seasoned entrepreneur too. So right now, what we're seeing from the IEB perspective is, particularly at younger business stages, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear-based decisions taking place. There's a lot of shrinking back from potential opportunities in the markets. And there's also a lot of people sort of wondering, like, was their vision ever possible in the first place? They can't even. All right, so where do we start today for real? I think we start today with this. So right now, we're in a very specific phase, a macro phase, if you will, in our industry, in our industry's history. So this is a very simplistic view. There's a lot of directions we could go with this, but I'll paint the picture for you like this. When the home inspection industry sort of emerged in the humble beginnings, phase 1, it was a lot of people driving around, getting business, convincing folks that a home inspection was important, right? As people sort of evolved and started to understand that, hey, real estate is like doing all kinds of things to increase their level of business. Like big teams are starting to form and all these different things are happening. We should probably do that too. We entered what was called the marketing phase, macro phase, right? The marketing phase lasted for a good while. And the kind of things that we saw in the marketing phase were things like what Paul was saying, building relationships, really doubled down on every opportunity to connect with agents. We also started seeing things like mail campaigns, like snail mail campaigns, email campaigns, phone calls, prospecting. The candy bowl era was upon us. Go by offices and drop stuff off and hope that they call you because of it. The marketing phase is where a lot of people sort of increased their level of business acumen and launched us eventually into the phase that we see ourselves in right now. That's the business building phase. The business building phase of the industry is defined more like this. We see where the industry is headed. We see the opportunity to work with top producing agents. We see the scale that we could achieve. And so it's translated into businesses who are really, really, really working on and refining their systems, processes, hiring great teams, and putting people in place to scale their company, right? And in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen that in a big way with people going from owner-operator to multi-inspector firms. And I know personally several companies who went from just a few years ago with 10 or 20 inspectors to where they are today with 50 plus. That's scale. That's business building. Those people at that scale are not thinking about home inspections. They're playing a different game, right? They're not in the field doing inspections. They're not the ones talking to agents. They have teams in place. The business building phase. The reason I share this with you, the reason we start here, is because it is critically important that in this industry, everybody has a great picture of where we are right now. Where I think we are right now is in transition to phase 4. And we've seen this phase in lots of other industries. In lots of other industries, take tech, for example, or social media marketing in the last 5 to 10 years. What's happened is an industry that came with a lot of technician-minded people that provided great products eventually matured to businesses run on teams, systems, and processes. And then as the industry matures further, larger companies emerge and they start to understand that the fastest way for them to grow is to merge and acquire, buy smaller businesses, right? We're in a downturn. A lot of people are seeing numbers that are not where they want to be right now. And one of the things we're talking about a lot in IEB is that this is one of the biggest opportunities for people who are willing and able to take advantage of it. Going from the business building phase to phase 4 is going to look a little different for people, right? Fast forward a couple of years from now, and I don't think it's going to be uncommon for people in this industry to be selling their companies or to be acquiring companies and thinking just like tech, just like other industries that have matured. Why is that important to know? It's important to know because your industry is shifting, whether you like it or not. That doesn't change where we are today, though. We're in the business building phase, and many of you are in need of the business building conversation, especially in a downturn, whether you're slow, low, flat, whether you're just gangbusters still, whatever you're experiencing right now, you're in the business building phase of the industry. What's coming next is aggregation at the top and people coming into the industry to either just eke out a living for themselves, a good living, or position their company to sell. Okay, that's a good thing. That will lead to more and more opportunity in the industry for people who are able and willing to take advantage of it. So winning in an up market looks a little different than winning in a down market. but the tactics are not all that different. Winning in an up market sometimes can feel like you're just doing everything right. Can I get an amen to last couple years, where almost every single person I talked to when they were curious about IEB and maybe we had a business consultation or something, it kind of went like this, like, I've got so much business, I don't know what to do with it, and I don't even market my company. A lot of people doing that. A lot of people experiencing that. The opposite was true too. I'm not getting business. How do I market my company? But a lot of people were just getting a flood of business for simply being in the market. That plays with your mind a little bit, especially as you enter into what we're experiencing now. Best Home Inspection Company is a real company that's in the IEB community. I've changed their name just to respect the privacy, even though there's not really any groundbreaking things that are going to be shared. I changed the name just because what happens in IEB stays in IEB. So Best Home Inspection Company is less than 5 years old. They started as a single man shop with a vision to grow really big. They thought that they would leave their past career behind, just kind of set out on their own and be their own person, right? Nobody to report to, own your schedule, have all this time freedom and money and all these different things that come with being a business owner. That's pretty common. People get into this industry looking for that autonomy, time freedom, financial freedom. What do you find most often, especially in the early business stages, is, well, you're working your tail off and there may not be as much money as you want in the bank, and time freedom is going to happen some other day when you have a team. Best Inspection Company had a big vision to be the biggest company in their state. Started about 5 years ago. They knew that they weren't going to be able to do it on their own. Clearly, you can't do that as a single man shop. So they started off from the beginning wanting to grow a team and really wanting to leverage high talent in their company. So through a series of events, they ended up joining the IEB community, which is how I know them, of course. And they started kind of doubling down on systems, processes, and really learning how to hire, recruit, and select top talent. And they put a small team of people together. And while they put this team together, they were experiencing exponential growth in volume. Lots and lots of inspections were coming in right after COVID. They were also growing like crazy just before COVID. The reason they were growing before COVID is because they were building lots and lots of relationships. They were doing things like prospecting, great retention, and a lot of kind of outside the box connecting with people, right? Connecting with people. All right. So just before COVID happened, and when I say COVID happened, what I'm talking about is right around 2020, March or so, when everything kind of started to just go like, oh my gosh, what's happening? People started freaking out. At that point, they had gone from a single man shop to a team of 4, and they were positioning themselves to grow even more. Okay. As COVID happened and their market shut down essentially overnight, what do you guys think happened? Did they get super excited? And they're like, man, this is the biggest opportunity that has ever happened to us. Definitely not. They got super scared. The owner started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for these people now, and we have no business. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months. I don't know if I'll even have a company. They braced for the worst, and they were tempted to kind of shrink back and cut cost everywhere, including with marketing and growth. We were having a conversation at that time that looked completely opposite of that. The conversation in the community that I'm a part of was more like this. Most people in the industry are going to make fear-based decisions. You guys are going to make strategy-based decisions that are in line with taking advantage of the opportunities you have in a down market. There's a science to it, in case you guys didn't know. Lots of industries have been there before. Our industry has been there before. And it looks more like this. Best inspection company doubled down on their growth efforts, and they reached out to everybody in their network and offered support. And then all of a sudden, when things opened back up, they were the person who was top of mind when an inspection was needed. One of my favorite marketing principles is that there's really only two spots in somebody's brain when they're looking for a service in their mind, right? And that's the number one spot or the number two spot. Your job in sales is to be in the number one spot. And that's what Best Inspection Company was doing. Everything possible to make it to where if somebody was thinking of needing an inspection, they called Best Inspection Company. Over the course of the next year, they went from 4 inspectors to 12. Consistently booked out 1 to 2 weeks, and big plans to continue growing the team. Growth covers a lot of sins. Who's heard that before? It's a pretty common phrase. Growth covers a lot of sins. As Best Home Inspection Company was growing, it was easy to just keep adding people to the team. It was easy to just keep doing inspections. Cash was flowing in. The company was profitable. They were profitable, meaning they could still keep expanding and hiring more people. They were booked out, which meant they had demand. But what they weren't seeing was with that sort of explosive growth, there were cracks forming in their services, their operations, and their growth lanes. That's how we think of a home inspection company in IEB, by the way. Service, operations, growth. If you're a sole operator, you're wearing all of those hats. So there was a lot of growth for companies in 2020 and 2021, just looked different. Excuse me, the other way around. From 2021 to 2022. So as you sort of see the cracks forming, especially at Best Inspection Company, so we had many conversations about what was happening as business started to slow over the last 6 months or so. We had this conversation a lot. Growth covers a lot of sins. Like, you guys were really successful when tons of business was coming your way, but all of a sudden things are looking a little bit different. So the cracks in marketing. Remember what I said before. I'm so busy, I don't even market my company. If I did market my company, I don't know that I could handle the volume. The last thing I want to do is turn away agents because I can't get to their inspections. So I just won't market until I need to. That's a crack. That's a crack. The reason it's a crack, to put it the way Gary Keller put it, you never stop marketing. You're always marketing. You're always working on growth, whether you are busy and booked out, whether you have zero business or somewhere in the middle, you're always keeping your pipeline of business hot. Some of the other cracks that started forming for Best Inspection Company, and often is the case, and we're seeing it with hundreds of inspection companies all around the country today, follow-up wasn't there. Why have a strong retention plan and a strong follow-up plan if they're going to call you back anyway? To Paul's point earlier today, like, those relationships and having those conversations after the inspection are what lead to more inspections. Lots of cracks in growth. That looks different today. They're aware of their cracks. They had cracks in operations that they were missing. If the phone's ringing off the hook and you miss a handful of calls throughout the day, it's not that big a deal. If you have a clunky scheduling procedure or somebody that's not really fast and streamlined with it, it's not that big a deal, as long as the phone's ringing and business is coming in. Also, while we're going fast and experiencing we'll just call it even normal business, let alone fast growth, layer upon layer upon layer of unneeded complexity usually occurs. Unneeded complexity. Complexity kills. It's one of the highest principles in scaling a business, actually. You have to simplify to scale, because most companies in the younger business stages will just add layers of complexity. They'll put a Band-Aid on a process, or they'll try to bootstrap a bunch of processes and softwares together. Before you know it, you're paying for 5 or 6 things. You may only need one. You're using 30% of each of those things. Clunky scheduling procedures, unneeded complexity, etc. Cracks in service. This is a big one. People don't think about this a lot, especially if they're booked out. You're just trying to go from one job to the next, one job to the next. You sole proprietors out there, you're going from one job to the next if the work is there. If you have a small team, your guys are doing the same thing. If you have a big team, then chances are this is far removed from you and you just don't even know it's occurring. But customer service suffers if you're not paying attention to it. Subpar customer service is what gets those agents to use you one time and then not again. It's that person you think about 3 months later and go, huh, where's that agent been? I know they're selling houses. Why haven't they used us? Poor training a lot of times leads to all kinds of issues with liability. It leads to issues with having to restructure your team over and over and over again. Sometimes it looks like this. You hire a guy, you don't have a great training system, and so you do the best you can. Maybe they shadow you for a while, you put them out there, let them get going, and all of a sudden they're making mistakes, but you don't know about the mistakes because you're not there. And it doesn't show up until you lose some business or until you have a lawsuit or something happens, right? Then all of a sudden you're like, there's all these cracks. Better take a look at our training system. And here's one of the most important ones, not tying service to growth. Best Inspection Company was just riding the wave of inspections that were occurring back in 2021 and early 2022. But they missed an opportunity. They were missing a big opportunity for their inspectors to be in the growth lane. When you're out there in the field, your job is to sell the next inspection. By working on those relationships, by working on the customer service, how you present yourself, how you communicate, the speed and efficiency with which you deliver, all of those things in that customer service lane lead to future growth. They're also the things that become silent killers when you're not paying attention to them. You see, if your inspectors or you, if it's just you, if you're not out there in the field thinking that you have your growth hat on while you're doing inspections, you're missing an opportunity. Often overlooked when times are good. Phone's ringing, we're booked out. We don't have to try that hard because there's so much demand. So the post-COVID demand for Best Inspection Company really kind of accelerated them into a level of business they weren't prepared for. We see this a lot. When there's a period of accelerated demand, companies can grow from where they are to where they're going. In this case, 4 inspectors to 12 or 15. I've forgotten the number for some reason, whatever I said earlier. When we see that happen, a lot of times we're seeing a person who had the business acumen to run a company at 3 or 4 people, suddenly trying to run a company at 15 plus people, for example. Those are 2 different games. Best Inspection Company's numbers were through the roof. They were continually growing. They were positioned to hire more people. What they were studying at the time in many of our classes and outside of IEB in a lot of great places too, was how to hire and put together top teams, like the best teams that you can find, right? So seeking high talent individuals. And the next step was seek high talent leaders. But then earlier this year, best home inspection company, and many of you, maybe, I know hundreds of companies that I've talked to started out experiencing some changes in their volume early in the year. Early in the year, we started hearing things like, Mark, it just feels like it's slowing down. It feels like it's slowing down. Then it started to shift to, yeah, I think it's slowing down. Both kind of on the same level, right? The question back was always, okay, well, how do we take that feel and think to, I know what's happening? That's an increase in business acumen. How do you evaluate your market? How do you evaluate the actual opportunity in your market? It was shifting. Early in the year, we heard numbers like it's 10% down, it's 20% down. And there are markets right now where we're hearing numbers like 50%, 60%. Most people seem to be flat or just below flat, with some markets being worse off than others. But markets are down. So Best Inspection Company was positioned to grow. Their plan was hire a team, keep going. Now we're going to put leaders in place so that the owner can step farther and farther up and be the CEO of the company. And there'd be a leader over service, a leader over operations, a leader over growth, and they'd continue to run this efficient machine that they've created. We've all experienced a ton of volatility in home inspections. I love that word. It's usually reserved for the stock market, but we started to see it showing up in real estate earlier this year. As CEOs with big firms and their economists and people were starting to say, hey, real estate is volatile. It's going to look more like the stock market, where there's going to be large swings up, large swings down based on consumer confidence. And aren't we seeing that? We're seeing that. It looks like this. Numbers start to creep back up for you guys. And then interest rates go up again and numbers crash. Numbers start to creep back up. Interest rates ratchet up again. Number crashes. The volume crashes. What's happening there? Well, what's happening is consumer confidence is all over the place. So there's this interesting thing that happens as a sort of cause and effect relationship. Eventually, people get used to the new normal and business returns, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that. But right now, we're still in one of those shock periods where we're dealing with frequent changes in interest rates, frequent changes in home prices, frequent changes in the amount of homes even on the market that people can pick from, and almost real-time shifts in what it takes to get one of those homes. Down we go into a down market. Here's the good news. We have been here before. Are all of the factors exactly the same? Definitely not. But we've been here before. The home inspection company, being tied to real estate, of course, has experienced a downturn before. Whoever is here that was around in 2007, 8, 9 understands that, periods like that eventually become a blip on the radar. A downturn market is not a doom and gloom conversation. It's a call of action. It's a call for you to fight harder as a business owner. They got through it over a decade ago. In other industries, the fighters win. They come out as the market leaders. This is no different. We've been here before. That's great news because we know how to handle a down market. We can draw lessons from other industries. We can draw lessons from our past downturns with real estate and inspections. That's good news. What happens if you're positioned for growth and growth isn't happening? Well, first, you freak out a little bit and you say, oh my gosh, my plan isn't going to work. That's common. Some people don't have that. Some people get super confident and they're like, we'll just change the plan, no big deal. But most people have a little bit of a period where they're going, I don't know what to do right now. A lot of companies hired people in anticipation of huge growth and the wave of growth to continue from last year into the next few years, right? And their growth plan was to hire, continually grow their team, capture market share, and just keep going. But now we're in this position of, okay, I'm not sure what to do. It's difficult to predict what's happening next. It's difficult to understand if my vision or what I want to do with my company is even realistic at this point. And I want to tell you, if you're finding yourself in a position where your plans are shifting, you're unclear on what to do, you're questioning yourself, you're questioning what was working before, pause for a moment, because we've been here before and we know what to do. The first step, if you feel unclear, is to understand that your vision has not changed. If you're listening to me right now, you're probably here to grow an inspection company. Your vision hasn't changed. The tactics might shift a bit, but the vision hasn't changed. So what do we do now? We stay focused on the vision. We stay focused on being clear about what needs to happen next. We get focused on the strategy of winning in a down market. What do we do now? There's a phrase that we're using a lot right now in IEB, and it's this: winning does not always feel like winning. I know there are some of you out there right now who are working your tails off for every inspection that you can get. Keep doing that. There's a lot of you out there that are working your tails off and not getting the inspections you want. Keep doing that. Keep your foot down on the gas pedal of growth. Keep building relationships. Winning does not always feel like winning. We say it every day right now. Positioning is the name of the game. In a downturn market, we're not talking quite as much about hiring, lots of people. Some of the biggest companies in IEB have hired, groups of 14 to 15 or so inspectors at a time. We're not having conversations like that right now. It's shifted to, hey, it's a down market. Let's get our toolbox out for this so we know what to do. Positioning is the name of the game. What does that mean? Positioning is a word that we use a lot because the mindset of positioning is future focused. It is the mindset for a down market. You see, when you're kind of taking a look at your market right now and you're trying to understand where the numbers are headed and what's going to happen in the next 6 months and what's it going to look like for you or a team if you're growing one or anything that you're doing in your inspection company, you've got to be future focused more now than ever. So the questions that a lot of people ask themselves is, what's my strategy today? Where am I thinking today? What's my level of thought around these business problems that I'm facing? Who am I talking to? Essentially, we're talking about the mindset you have as a business owner in a downturn market. Those are some of the wrong questions. What does my company look like today? Toss that out. What is my strategy for tomorrow? Toss it out for now. Put all that on the shelf. Start asking yourself, what does my company need to look like in 12 months, in 18 months? With the current conditions, if they don't improve, or if they do improve, what do I need my company to look like? There's all kinds of strategies about that. See, there's positioning strategies that work in up markets, down markets, flat markets. Today, we're talking about a down market. It starts like this. All those cracks we talked about earlier, they start to expose places where you're losing money, right? Especially when you're a young entrepreneur, or perhaps just a small team, or maybe you're wearing a lot of hats, or maybe you're hands off, or for whatever reason. What happens to us a lot of times is we end up having a lot of cost and expense that's just not necessary. I can tell you from my own experience in startups, we typically will get a software for email campaigns, and a software for a report writing thing, and a software for perhaps scheduling, and a software for this and for that and for this and for that. And before you know it, you've got 5 or 10 different things and only doing 30% of each of those. And that's fine, so long as there's a lot of money coming in. It's not really fine. You should take a look at that. But in a downturn where there's not as much revenue coming in, you start to see those things. You start to look at your P&Ls. You start to look at your numbers and identify where there's a lot of unneeded expense and unneeded cost. So it's time to get lean, right? And don't wait until you have to. If your numbers are down and you have not already looked line by line at every expense that you have and said, yes, I need this, no, I don't, that's one of your first steps right now. If you don't have a P&L, if you don't have clean numbers to use, start there. You're not going to be able to mature as a business owner unless you can lead with the numbers. When we talk about getting lean with smaller companies, a lot of times what we're talking about is first you. What does your personal life look like? See, you want to live within your means, right? And your means have changed if you're not bringing in as much revenue. So starting with your lifestyle, where can you get lean? Then take a look at the expenses in your company and keep going. What can you cut? Where can you sort of peel back expense without slowing down your growth activities? The next thing is refining. We talk a lot about this in IEB, and I have a lot of conversations with people in the home inspection industry that basically sound like this. I'm just doing inspections and making phone calls. Somebody else is answering the phones. I've got a call center or a person or this or that. And because I've been so busy, we've just kind of done everything as we can. We haven't really documented any systems or processes. We haven't really refined them. We're just sort of reacting to the business that we're getting. But now that we're not getting as much business, we're seeing that some of these processes are redundant, or maybe not needed, or maybe they were never really producing the desired result to begin with. If you're finding yourself in a position where you have lower volume, take advantage of the opportunity to refine your systems and processes. Start documenting your policies and your procedures. On the other side, when things pick back up again, if your aim is to scale a team, for example, you're going to want to have a high-level streamlined training program. You're going to want to bring in a growth person at some point if your aim is to grow your company. And you're going to want to have something to hand them. Yeah, here's my scripts that I've worked out. Here are the KPIs I use. Here's the accountability system we're going to have. And here's one of the biggest things. Pause for dramatic effect. We talk a lot about numbers. We talk a lot about using your financials to make great business decisions. And I know there are a lot of you out there right now who do not have a clean P&L, who do not have a sound economic model. Maybe some of you have hired a team. Perhaps you're paying them too much. That's one of the most common things that happens when I meet people in the industry and we deep dive into their company is we find out that they're paying their inspectors too much. Not because we're mean, we want to pay people a lot, but because if you're going to scale a company, your service cost has to be reasonable and fit within your economic model. Financial literacy in this industry is something that's lacking. If you're listening to me and you've got financial literacy nailed down, you are a rare person in this industry. Most people jump in as a technician and eventually learn that they need to figure out what to do with the numbers. And it goes like this. An opportunity for you, if you have time on your hands right now, or if your market's in a downturn, is to take advantage of the extra time that you might have. Develop a clean chart of accounts. Your clean chart of accounts will lead to a cleaner P&L if you do the work to do that. This is if you're doing all this on your own. Once you have a clean P&L, you can take a look at your cost versus expenses and start to build out an economic model that fits where you are today and fits where you are a year from now, 5 years from now, with a scalable pay model. Not a lot of people think about the economic model at the owner-operator stage. In fact, we have a lot of companies that are even at the what we call the entrepreneur level, company sizes of 6 to 15 inspectors that still don't have budgets. That's where we start with them. Well, you got to lead with the numbers. Refine your systems and processes. Refine your budget. A lot of times what it looks like to win in a down market is that you're positioning yourself to be a leaner, faster, more efficient company on the other side. Why? So that when business starts flooding back your way, because it will, if you're still around, we don't know when, but it's coming. The goal is to position yourself to be able to take advantage of it and be a better company. You see, if you're still the same level of business owner this time in 6 months than you are today, you're not playing the right game. This is your opportunity to get ahead of the industry and position yourself for growth. Some of the other things we talk about is creeping up your average inspection fee, right? Some companies are taking advantage of the inflationary period that we're in to start ratcheting up their inspection fees. I mean, it's pretty well expected at this point. There's all kinds of different models, all kinds of different thoughts and ideas about how to price your services. What I would encourage you not to do is take part in the race to the bottom. In case you don't know what that means, there's always temptation when business starts to slow to drop your prices, offer bigger discounts, have sales. We see this all the time in other industries. Don't take part in the race to the bottom. If it's part of your strategy to have a lower price, great, lean into it. But don't be tempted to go there just because you're making fear-based decisions. Prospecting. When you're refining your growth, we talk a lot about prospecting because prospecting is one of the highest return on investment strategies that you can have. It doesn't cost much to pick up a phone. When you start to turn that into a system and you start to refine it, the return on that investment for your simple time and energy is pretty astronomical. Of course, there's a lot of factors to consider there, right? How many phone calls are you going to make in a week? How many connections? What are you going to say? All of those considerations. That's more of the strategy lane. We're not going there today. But picking up your phone right now, today, in this down market, and connecting with as many top producing agents first and then everybody else later in your market is positioning. Remember, winning may not feel like winning. You may be having conversations that are building relationships right now for business that doesn't occur for the next 6 months. But doesn't that sound better than no business 6 months from now? Pick up the phone, call your agents. And remember too, they're going through this with you. One of my favorite talk tracks is picking up the phone and explaining that, hey, we just want to check on you. You know, we know what the market's doing. We know you're a go-getter. We just want to make sure you know that we're here for you. Customer service, training systems, improve your report writing, become faster, become more efficient, become a better company. And here's one of the most important parts. And this is where I like to start as a coach when I'm talking to people. You are the most important part of this puzzle, the most important piece of this puzzle. You as a business owner, you as a leader, you as a mother, husband, father, friend, all the different labels that you wear. You are the most important part of this entire thing. And you must survive. Winning does not always feel like winning, but there's opportunities right now for you to exponentially increase your level of business acumen by asking questions that you would not have even known to ask if you weren't in a downturn. There's an opportunity for you right now to refine yourself into the business owner that is capable of leading a growing and scaling company. And those lessons for a lot of people can only be learned in adversity. Welcome to adversity, down market. You're the most important piece of the strategy. Something we talk a lot about in our community is your inputs. The inputs that you have, the people around you, the media that you consume, the social media that you consume, the news, books you read, podcasts, the radio you listen to, conversations you allow yourself to absorb. Your inputs equal your outputs. What are you listening to right now? What are the inputs in your world? Do they sound like the world is falling apart? We've been here before. It's going to be okay. Do they sound like division is everywhere in your life and in our country and there's nothing we can do about it? That's happened before too. Is everything the same as the, maybe previous occurrences? No. But we've been here before. Are you surrounding yourself with people who are helping you excel, or people who are looking at you going, man, that's super tough. Are you sure you want to be doing that? Like, why don't you go get a job, or why don't you do this business? Or they're pulling your focus away from your vision of growing and scaling an inspection company. What are your inputs? Do you have inputs? The answer is yes, we all do. The better question is, do you have purposeful input? You see, if we can design what is influencing us or what we are allowing to influence our world, then we get to design the output. You are the most important piece of your business. You are the most important piece of this puzzle. It's on your shoulders to refine your company, get your systems and processes in order, and be a higher level thinker on the other side of this. If you can accomplish that, if you can expose yourself to higher and higher levels of thinking, you can surround yourself with higher and higher groups of people, higher and higher minded groups of people, if you can read books that fill the gaps in knowledge that you have, if you can listen to podcasts that pump you up and excite you, then you'll be the person that can run your company in a downturn and beyond. The last part of this is, as you're really considering thinking about yourself and your development, don't do it alone. For me, the conversation is always this. People explain to me what they're going through in their business. And one of my first questions is, who's helping you with that? Sometimes the answer is, oh yeah, I have a business coach, or I have, some friends in the industry and that kind of thing. But almost all the time, there's a gap, right? The lonely entrepreneur. If that's you, if this is resonating with you, or if it's not, it's the same. Don't do this alone. Whether you need to grab a mentor or a coach or jump into a group of like-minded people, wherever that is, my encouragement to you guys is to not build your company with just your mind. Do it with other people who care about your success, who are willing to lift you up, willing to bring you back down to reality, willing to hurt your feelings if needed to get you back on the right track. People who are willing to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. How about you try this? Because surround yourself with people who can cut the trial and error out of getting through a downturn. Surround yourself with people who can cut the trial and error out of building systems and processes, cut the trial and error out of your growth systems. And I'm telling you, the faster you can accelerate your personal growth, the easier it will be for you to survive in a downturn. Last thing about you. We don't talk about this as entrepreneurs a lot. But what are you doing to fill your cup? Not all of you are in a bad place right now, but we're here to talk about a downturn market. And in a downturn market, a lot of times what happens is people begin to lose focus, lose motivation, burn out, work 60, 70 hours a week for what feels like no return. What are you doing to fill your own cup? Remember, you're the most important piece of this equation. So focus on your health, focused on your loved ones. Make sure you have adventurous things planned out and on your calendar. And if you have hobbies, don't put those on the back burner. Because remember, you have to survive in order for the company to survive. Not only that, but if you're thriving and in a good place mindset-wise, chances are your company will be too. The best home inspection company, still in IEB today, what they look like now is they've pivoted their strategy. Their strategy was higher, 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 just keep growing, keep going. As long as the market is expanding, so are we. Their market is contracting right now. And one of the biggest pieces of their strategy is something we talk a lot about in our coaching, which is lead with profitability. Okay, lead with profitability. And this is the thought I'd like to leave you guys with whatever you're experiencing in your market. Lead with profit. It's a much different mindset than leading with revenue. Revenue is the mindset of, hey, we're going to spend everything we have and whatever's left, maybe we'll take that as a distribution as an owner. Leading with profit looks more like this. I'm going to make sure I'm maintaining a level of profit that allows me to expand my company when things turn around. Case in point, a flat company or an unprofitable company cannot expand. There's no money to do it. But if you right size your company in a downturn, cut costs, get lean, and lead with profitability and say, hey, I'm going to make sure I'm maintaining a level of profit, putting some cash in the bank, because I know as soon as business picks back up, it's going to be time to hire. That's a different mindset. All right. I think I'm running up against the clock here because I see Dax popping up. So I'll wrap us up like this and just say, hey, thanks for listening to me for an hour. And I'm happy to connect with anybody who's curious about any of this stuff. We love deep dive conversations with people to just help people uncover gaps or strengths in their business. And my email is up on the screen. So mark@iebcoaching.com. We did not talk about strategy at all. We stayed very high level today. That was on purpose because I want you guys to get that mindset. And how you're thinking about your company in this situation is the most important part. If you're interested in the strategy piece of it, we have all kinds of classes and things like that. Just feel free to jump on our website.
Now, Mark, I know you're a professional, but for those who haven't had to do a Zoom for an hour where you present and you're not sure if people are still there, what's happening, it's hard to do. And you did it like the pro you are. And we're very appreciative for your presentation. A lot of the topics you covered are topics that our support team hear about from people on a daily basis, and our web and SEO team. And the internal team on our Slack channels have been sort of chatting about what you've been talking about. And once these recordings are live, we're going to use this and point people back to it for a long time to come, I think. The questions that came in, they didn't necessarily pop up at the moment. You were still on a particular topic, so I didn't want to interrupt you with those. We'll take just a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, and sort of dive into a couple of those questions. There's one from that was anonymous here. If you're just entering the business, what advice would you offer someone newly certified, just getting started in this kind of market? He says, in other words, or she says, in other words, right now with everything that's going on, how would you begin?
Such a good question. And this is common because there's low barriers to enter this industry. There's low barriers to exit as well, right? And so what we see a lot is people jumping in, and then they jump in and they figure out, oh my gosh, there's a shift happening. The answer to the question, though, is only two things are of utmost importance at that stage of business. One, that you provide an exceptional product. Two, that you are really pushing your growth pedal hard. And I really, really want to stress the importance of building relationships. Some people are okay with jumping on the phone and calling as many agents as they can, putting a system behind that. Some people are more comfortable with going to open houses or going to offices, swinging by, doing some in-person. And then here's the painful part. Some people aren't comfortable with any of that. They just want to do inspections. But you've got to do it anyway. If you want to start growing your business, you've got to increase your level of confidence, building relationships that lead to business. And the only way that you do that is just do it. Stink at it. Fail forward, mess up your conversations, and get good as you go. That's what will lead to business.
It's great advice. It's hard to get started, but the difference between your third call and your 100th call is a lot smaller than the difference between your first call and your third call. Debbie and several others are commenting. Thank you very much for your presentation. One last question. Brad is asking particular ideas for marketing around follow-up and retention.
Follow-up and retention, yeah. So we see a lot of times that companies don't have particularly strong follow-up and retention plans. In fact, most companies don't know that you need a strong follow-up and retention plan. So there's a lot of strategies for it. One of the most common and easiest is, again, I say this till I'm blue in the face, but hey, pick up the phone. Like, give these people a call and check on them, maybe 10 days after, 20 days after. And the conversation can go something as simple as this. Hey, I really appreciated the job the other day, and I just wanted to make sure you had all your inspections scheduled. Happy to help you out if you need somebody. Those touch points, people just build it up in their mind as this very complex and scary thing. And truth be told, that touch point is what's most important, not necessarily what you said, but the fact that you reached out. And so if that's helpful for anybody to hear, that's some low-hanging fruit. Anybody you're doing business with needs follow-up. Now we start getting more complex from there, right? Where we start talking about automated follow-up and email campaigns and automated texts and things like that. All of those have a place. And if you're in a business position where you're taking advantage of things like that, this is the time to just refine those things and make sure that you have a consistent level of connection with your agents. And that's the trick. Remember, in marketing or in sales, there's two spots you want to occupy, number one or number two. Number one is best. If you can't be number one, be number two. Anything else doesn't matter. Anything else is called Google. Just take the first person I find.